Hey everyone, and welcome to another Armoured Warfare video. It's been a while since I've done one of these tank review videos, but since the guys at my.com have hooked me up with a tank that's been in the game for a while but has never properly been released, I thought I should do a video on it, and that is the Tier 6 Armoured Fighting Vehicle, the Sabre. Now the Sabre was originally in the game, it was going to be used as a reward from the Lords of War game mode, but that actually never made it into the game. So it's kind of sat there, almost unused, at least from the point of view of being a playable vehicle. It did make it in as a vehicle that the AI use in PvE though, so the model hasn't sat there being completely unused. The Sabre itself was actually designed, it was a hybrid vehicle supposed to take on the role of both the 76mm armed Scorpion and the FV721 Fox, both of which were taken out of service and replaced with the Sabre. It was pretty much nothing more than an aging Scorpion hull with the Fox's turret mounted on top of it. The Sabre honestly didn't really last very long, however. It was phased out of service after only 9 years. But bearing in mind it was trying to reuse 40-year-old components, you could argue it was actually fairly successful in what it did. It did get some use while peacekeeping in former Yugoslavia, and a little bit of use during the Iraq War as well. Now, however, its role is filled by another vehicle, and that is the Scimitar 2, which is currently in service with the British Army. So what can you expect from it if you get your hands on it? Well, like I said earlier, it's a Tier 6 premium armoured fighting vehicle, and it's armed with missiles and a cannon. I know that is a very simplistic look at it, so let's look more in depth at the vehicle and what you can actually expect from it. Well, let's start off with the vehicle's strongest feature, and that is the missiles, which, as far as I could tell, it never had on the real vehicle. But these ones, they're pretty much ripped straight off the Tier 6 Swingfire. Although it doesn't get the upgraded missiles that the Swingfire does, it gets the ones with 700 damage and 625 penetration instead of 700. Honestly though, this doesn't really affect it too much in reality. It's still more than enough to deal with certainly any lighter targets, plus MBTs frontally provided you can aim for weak spots. Aiming for weak spots though can be rather tricky because it has the same kind of firing mechanism as the Swingfire, which is that they fire almost straight up from the tubes on the back of the vehicle. This is nice for some top-down attacks on things like engine beds of heavier vehicles, or up and over cover, which I actually use it fairly often for. But it does make it so it's kind of tricky to aim for specific spots, for example lower front plates on main battle tanks. Other vehicles with ATGMs that fire horizontally, they can do that much easier, such as the BMP or even the Fox for example. Now, the 30mm Rattling autocannon that gets really isn't anything to write home about. It's actually worse than the same gun on the Scimitar at Tier 2, as well as the Fox also at Tier 6, which is even funnier since it's even the same turret as the Fox. It's literally same gun, same turret. Both of these vehicles get 45 damage, 150 penetration, while the Sabre has 45 damage with 125 penetration for some reason, and honestly, I can't work that out why. It really could do with the extra 25 penetration though that the other vehicles with the same gun get, especially since you've got to compete with the constantly firing BMP3, which has slightly less damage, but the same penetration as the Sabre. Plus it doesn't have to reload every 6 shots. It's just a feature that honestly I do like on the Rattling because it does give the gun a little bit of character, but it does need to be given slightly better stats to compensate for that, which honestly it doesn't really. One thing that honestly the Sabre does well in its role is as a scout, which is kind of what the vehicle was designed for in the first place. Higher camo rating than either the BMP3 or the Fox. It can stay hidden while firing extremely well, especially if you combine that with some of the upcoming camo skills in the commander tree, plus some retrofits, and it can make it extremely difficult to spot. Which is good because it has exactly the same view range as a BMP3 of 430 meters, and that means it's actually got 10 meters less of view range than the Fox. So you are going to need that extra camo to remain unspotted if you want to be hiding in a bush throwing missiles at the enemy. When you do get spotted though, you do have the mobility to relocate. Top speed of a shade under 80 km an hour isn't even close to that of the Fox, where that's 104, but it is faster than the BMP3, although only just. Acceleration between the Sabre and the BMP is pretty similar, both around 2.9 seconds to 32 km an hour, although once again the superior engine in the Fox means that despite it being slightly heavier, it accelerates quite a bit faster, taking just 1.7 seconds to hit 32 kph. So that brings me to this, my conclusion, my overall opinion on the Sabre. Do I like it? Do I think it's a good vehicle? And the answer is yes, I think it's a good vehicle. While no, on paper, it's not as good as the BMP3 or the Fox, with it falling short in many regards when you compare the Sabre against those. that doesn't mean it's a bad vehicle, just not as good as those two. Properly fitted with its fantastic camo plus the telescopic lenses Mark II, plus maybe the electro-optical absorbing paint, you can raise your view range up to 500 meters while you're stopped, plus having 52% camo on top of that. This means you can sit at range, lobbing missiles at anything you spot, you can outspot pretty much everything, whilst having the mobility to shoot and scoot, moving after you get spotted. This reminds me a lot of the old school swing fire, which used to be able to carry the entire back end of a game, especially if it was the last vehicle alive, because it was so hard to spot, yet it was fast enough to relocate a lot, and could throw missiles in your direction at a crazy rate. It was super frustrating to fight against, yet it was super effective, and the Sabre can also do that. I've had a lot of fun on the Sabre, and while statistically I might have been better off in a BMP or a Fox, I didn't at any point wish that I was. I like this little thing quite a bit, and maybe being British I'm slightly biased, but honestly it's a good little machine if you play it right. I play it far too aggressively. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it is a lot of fun to play with. The only real criticism of it I've got is honestly I would like to see that Rattling cannon regain the extra 25mm of penetration, and since honestly it doesn't make any sense to be worse than literally exactly the same gun on the other vehicles. The other differences between it and the Fox are down to historical accuracy, mostly the engine being straight up worse than the Fox's, but the cannon is something I would like to see remedied. I'm not 100% sure how the Sabre is going to make it into the game, whether it's going to be a reward vehicle for the upcoming stage of the campaign, I have no idea. But honestly, I know I'm going to be grinding my butt off to try and get hold of this fun little machine. So I hope you enjoyed my look at the Sabre. Hopefully some more Armoured Warfare content coming soon with the release of 0.22 and the Steam release of the game on the 17th of November. However, for now, many thanks for watching, and I shall see you in the next video.